How many guys out there can honestly say their wife has that kind of presence? Not the kind that gets you fame or anything, but that aura that pulls attention the moment she walks into a room. People notice. Men notice. That was Emily. She didn't have a massive social media following, and she didn't have some high-powered career, but there was something about her. It was impossible for people not to take notice wherever she went. You know the type, the one who doesn't even have to try, and yet, everyone's head turns when she walks in. Believe me, I noticed. We got married in our mid-20s, and now we're creeping up on 40. We met back in college. Emily was that bubbly, outgoing type, the one who could light up any room she walked into. I was more the quiet, reserved guy. We couldn't have been more different. Opposites attract, right? For a while, everything was perfect. We had that chemistry, got married, bought a house, had 2 beautiful daughters. It was the kind of suburban life people dream about. I worked a regular office job, nothing exciting, just the typical 9-to-5 grind with decent pay and benefits. Emily mostly stayed at home, especially when the kids were younger. Occasionally, she'd do some part-time work, helping out a neighbor or taking on odd jobs when she felt like it. How was our marriage? Honestly, it was just okay. Fine, really. Nothing was outright wrong, but nothing was amazing either. We weren't all over each other, but we weren't fighting constantly either. We just existed, raising the kids, paying bills, trying to make life work. The intimacy, it was still there, but let's be real, it wasn't like in the beginning. It had turned into just another thing that happened on autopilot. Looking back, I can see the signs I missed. At first, they were small, easy to brush off. Emily started going out more. Sometimes for groceries, sometimes to meet a friend for coffee, or even just to take a walk. Nothing strange about that, except those trips started to stretch longer. She'd come home and casually mention how the line at the store was crazy, or that she'd bumped into someone. I didn't think anything of it. We'd been married for over 10 years. I trusted her. She was a good wife, a great mom. Why would I question her? But as time went on, the little things started to add up. There were more nights when she'd stay out later than usual. More times when she'd come back, and I'd ask about her day, and the answer always seemed too rehearsed, like she'd already figured out what to say. And then there were the phone calls. She started spending more time on her phone, texting and smiling at it like a teenager. At first, I just figured she was catching up with friends or planning something with the other moms. Then one night, I went to give her a quick kiss goodnight, and she pulled away, saying she was too tired. Stung a little, but I just let it go. People get tired, right? I was tired too. But then the buzzing started. Her phone kept going off, especially when we were sitting on the couch together in the evenings. I'd be watching TV, and she'd be glued to that tiny screen of hers, her eyes locked on whatever was there. It wasn't the usual social media scrolling. It was messages, texts. At first, I started to glance over at her phone, casually, just to see who she was talking to. But every time I got too close, she'd quickly close it. That's when the knot in my stomach tightened. But I kept telling myself, it's nothing. You're just being paranoid. I didn't realize how wrong I was until one night when I woke up to find her on the phone, thinking I was still asleep. It was a low, hushed conversation. I couldn't hear much, but I heard enough. Enough to know it wasn't a call to her mom or a friend. You know I can't right now. Are you still awake? Maybe tomorrow. Cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I wanted to jump out of bed and demand to know who she was talking to, but I stayed frozen, pretending to be asleep while my mind raced. Could she be cheating? No, not Emily. She wouldn't do that. Would she? The next morning, everything seemed normal. She was smiling, getting the kids ready for school, kissing me goodbye like nothing had happened. But something had changed. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started paying closer attention, noticing every little thing, every tiny detail that seemed a little strange. I started asking more questions, nothing too obvious, just casual stuff. Who were you talking to last night? Or where did you go today? But she always had an answer ready, like she'd practiced it. Oh, just a friend. Or I went for a walk. Nothing extraordinary, but everything about it felt off. And then one evening it happened. I was cleaning up after dinner when her phone buzzed on the counter. She was in the other room, so I picked it up, planning to hand it to her when she returned. But then I saw the name on the screen. Someone I didn't recognize. It wasn't one of her friends or family. It was a man's name. My stomach dropped, and I couldn't help myself. I had to see what the message said. When I opened it, I found far more than I expected. 40 messages full of inside jokes, winks, and emojis that didn't sit right. In that moment, everything changed. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was having an affair. The realization hit me hard, like a punch to the gut. My hands trembled as I put the phone down, pretending everything was fine as she walked into the kitchen. I couldn't even look at her. It felt like I was living in some twisted version of my own life, one where I didn't know what was real anymore. The knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. I was stuck in a cycle of suspicion and confusion. Sure, I'd seen those texts, and yes, they raised red flags, but I couldn't bring myself to believe it. I kept telling myself it couldn't be true. Maybe I was overthinking things, but that sick feeling in my gut only grew stronger. A few days later, we were out running errands just like we always did, picking up groceries, doing the usual. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I was pushing the cart, and Emily had wandered off down one of the aisles. As I turned a corner, I spotted someone I hadn't seen in years, an old college friend. Let's call him Mark. He was standing by the shelves, but there was something weird about the way he was acting. He seemed to be trying to hide, darting behind displays and glancing over his shoulder like he didn't want anyone to see him. At first, I couldn't help but think I was imagining things. Why on earth would Mark be hiding out in a grocery store? But the curiosity gnawed at me, and I couldn't just let it go. So, I left the cart behind and made my way toward him. "Mark," I called out, trying to sound casual. He jumped, looking like I'd caught him doing something he wasn't supposed to. When he saw it was me, though, his face lit up with a forced smile. "Oh, hey man, it's been a while." We exchanged some awkward small talk, but something felt off. He was way too upbeat, too eager. It almost felt like he was trying too hard to be normal. I glanced over my shoulder, trying to see if Emily had noticed me talking to him, but she was still deep into another aisle, completely unaware of what was happening. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to figure out why he seemed so jittery. "Yeah, all good," he replied too quickly, his eyes scanning the store like he was looking for a way out. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you." "About what?" I raised an eyebrow, suddenly more suspicious. "Not here," he muttered, his voice dropping. He glanced over his shoulder nervously. "There's a bar down by the strip mall, you know the one. Let's meet there later. We can talk." I was confused. Mark had always been the outgoing, confident guy, not the kind to look like he was hiding something. Still, something in his voice made me uneasy, and I couldn't just brush it off. There was a sense of urgency that I couldn't ignore. "All right," I said, though I wasn't sure how I felt about it. "I'll meet you there after I put the kids to bed and let Emily know I've got stuff to do." Later that night, I walked into the bar and immediately saw Mark sitting alone in a corner booth, a beer already in front of him. But when I spotted him, something had shifted. He didn't look anxious or nervous anymore. In fact, he looked downright calm, almost too calm. He was different now. The twitchy energy from the store was gone, replaced by someone who seemed more in control. "Glad you could make it," he said, taking a sip from his drink and setting it down. "I've been thinking about you." "Thinking about me?" I chuckled, though I wasn't really laughing. "What do you mean by that?" "I remember the old days," he said, leaning back in his seat, his tone shifting. "And I want to help you." "Help me with what?" I asked, now feeling completely thrown off. This was starting to feel more serious. "I know things you don't," he said, his gaze sharpening. He slid a business card across the table. I picked it up. It was for a massage studio. "What's this about?" I asked, my confusion mounting. "I've seen your wife there," he said, lowering his voice as if someone might overhear. "Thought you should know." "Yeah, she goes there sometimes," I said quickly, trying to downplay it. "She likes getting facials, massages, just the usual stuff." Mark shook his head, his expression growing more serious. "No, man. She works there." I blinked, completely thrown. What? Works there? She can't even give a massage. Why would she be working there? Mark sighed deeply, his eyes never leaving mine. It's not that kind of place. It's a different kind of thing. I was struggling to piece it together. What do you mean, different? Mark shifted, clearly uncomfortable now, but he didn't hesitate to explain. It's a massage parlor, but not like you think. It's the kind of place where women do more than just massages. They get paid for extra services. A cold chill ran down my spine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're sure it was her? My voice barely made it past a whisper, a tightness creeping into my chest. Mark nodded, his face grave. Yeah, I saw her there. She works on a flexible schedule. Just shows up whenever she can. The weight of his words hit me like a punch. Mark wasn't guessing. He wasn't speculating. He was certain. He had seen her and he knew. As he spoke, I felt the floor slip out from under me. My wife, the mother of my children, was working in a place like that? What was going on? Had all the little part-time jobs she'd taken on really been something else? All those times she claimed to be doing innocent errands? I was drowning in questions, and I had no answers. I'm really sorry, man, Mark said, finishing his drink and standing up. But you need to know. As I walked out of the bar, my head was spinning. Everything felt disconnected. I couldn't even process what I had just learned. Emily, my wife, in a place like that? For money? How had it all gone so wrong? I felt numb. Mark's words echoed in my mind, and none of it made sense. Part of me wanted to march home and confront her, demand the truth, but another part of me hesitated. What if Mark was mistaken? What if there was a simple explanation? What if I was wrong? What if I confronted her and made a fool of myself? I couldn't risk that. So I made a choice. I wouldn't say anything yet. I needed to find out for myself. The next day, when Emily went out on one of her usual errands, I stayed behind. The minutes felt like hours as I sat in silence, staring at the clock, trying to calm myself. But my thoughts were racing, a mess of confusion and doubt. After what felt like forever, I grabbed my keys and headed for the massage parlor Mark had told me about. When I stepped inside, everything seemed completely normal at first. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile, treating me like any other customer. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but distant. "Yeah," I said, my voice shaky. "Is anyone available for a massage?" She checked the schedule and nodded. "We have a spot open. You can go on in, lie down, and someone will be with you shortly." My heart was pounding as the woman led me into a dimly lit room. Soft spa music hummed in the background, the scent of lavender heavy in the air. I stood there for a moment, hesitating, unsure of what I was even doing. I took off my shirt, feeling like I was in some kind of strange dream, but still, I couldn't bring myself to stop. For a second, I thought about walking out, but instead, I undressed completely and lay face down on the massage table. What had I gotten myself into? A few minutes passed, and then the door opened. A woman stepped in, but she wasn't what I expected. She was older, likely in her late 50s or early 60s. She didn't say anything at first, just started rubbing oil onto my back, easing it into my muscles with the professional touch I'd been expecting. For a moment, I felt a sense of relief. This was normal, right? Just a regular massage. But then, after a few minutes, she spoke up, her voice casual. "So, what kind of massage are you looking for today?" she asked, as if she were asking about a routine appointment. "We've got the therapeutic stuff, or maybe you're looking for something a little more." I froze. This was exactly what Mark had warned me about. My pulse quickened. I tried to keep my composure, clearing my throat before forcing out a reply. "Yeah, maybe something more." She didn't say a word. She just stopped, gave me one last look, and walked out of the room. My heart raced. I couldn't back out now. A few minutes later, the door creaked open again. But this time, it wasn't the older woman. A younger woman stepped in, likely in her late 20s, wearing tight leggings and a tank top. She gave me a knowing smile, but didn't say anything, just immediately started the massage. But this was different. Her touch was soft, slow, deliberate. The room felt charged in a way that made my skin prickle. I won't go into details, but it didn't take long for me to realize that this wasn't a regular massage anymore. It ended exactly how I feared it would. And to my surprise, I didn't stop it. I let it happen. I went along with it. And as it happened, I couldn't deny that it felt good. Too good. When it was over, I dressed in silence, my mind foggy. I handed her a tip, much more generous than I'd intended, and walked out, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same. As I stepped outside, the guilt hit me like a freight train. I had just done exactly what I feared Emily might be doing. I had crossed a line, and I still didn't even know the truth. If Mark had been wrong, if Emily wasn't involved in this place at all, then I had just destroyed everything for nothing. I couldn't think straight. The drive home was a blur, my thoughts spinning out of control. What had I just done? And what the hell was I supposed to do next? When I got home, everything was eerily quiet. Emily hadn't returned yet, and the kids were still at school. I sat down at the kitchen table, trying to make sense of it all. My hands were shaking as I replayed the events in my head. Was this really what Emily was doing behind my back? Or had I let my paranoia get the best of me, pushing me to do something I shouldn't have? Either way, one thing was certain. I wasn't innocent anymore. I sat there in the stillness, the minutes dragging on, my heart pounding in my chest. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was real, it didn't feel like I thought it would. My fingers drummed nervously against my knee, the silence between each breath growing heavier. I couldn't believe I was sitting there, questioning everything that had been so familiar. The massage parlor, her special place. As I thought of it, in the last 24 hours, I'd gone through a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion. So many that I couldn't even process it all. And now, as I waited for her to walk through that door, I felt a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. The revelation from last night had changed everything, and I wasn't ready for what was about to happen. I waited until Emily had fallen asleep beside me, her breath even and steady. Then I did it. I went through her phone. I know some people might say that was crossing a line, but after everything I'd seen, after everything Mark had told me, I didn't care anymore. I needed answers. I had to know the truth. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her messages. I came across the ones about the massage parlor first. It hit me like a punch to the gut. The appointments, the shifts, the VIP clients. But it wasn't just about work. No, these messages were explicit. They weren't about deep tissue or relaxation massages. They were about keeping the clients happy, giving them exactly what they paid for. I felt sick as I read her words, seeing her talk about herself as if she was a commodity, something to be bought and sold. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what I found next. The messages from him. Chris. At first, I didn't recognize the name, just another contact in her phone. But as I kept scrolling, the messages grew clearer. He wasn't just a client. He was something more. There was affection in their messages, not just about appointments, but about their feelings. They joked, they flirted. Each text made my stomach churn, a deeper pit forming with every word. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was emotional. And as much as I wanted to throw her phone against the wall, as much as I wanted to scream, I stayed calm. I couldn't act too quickly. If I blew up, I wouldn't get the whole truth. Part of me, though, some small part, still couldn't fully believe it. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But I needed to see it with my own eyes. So there I was, waiting at the massage parlor to see if Emily, or as they called her there, Sabrina, would walk through that door. The minutes dragged on like hours, each one heavier than the last. Finally, the door creaked open, and she stepped inside. Her head was down, probably expecting another client. She didn't notice me right away. But when our eyes finally met, her entire face went pale, and panic flashed across her features. What are you doing here? She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, staring at her, letting the silence stretch between us like a heavy weight. Finally, I spoke, my voice low but controlled, the anger bubbling under the surface. "You tell me," I said coldly. "Or should I call you Sabrina now?" She blinked, her mouth opening and closing, desperate for the right words. But there were no words left. She was cornered. We both knew it. "We need to talk about this," she finally said, her voice shaking. "Talk?" I scoffed, standing up from the massage table, my fists clenched. "What's there to talk about? You've been lying to me for who knows how long. Sneaking around, working in a place like this, with clients." I practically spat the word, my voice rising as my anger swelled. She stepped forward, her hands outstretched as if trying to calm me. "It's not what you think," she began, her voice faltering. But I couldn't hold back. "Not what I think?" I shot back, stepping into her space. "I know exactly what this is, Emily. I've seen the messages. I know who you're meeting. VIP clients, special treatments. What the hell is really going on here?" Her expression twisted in agony, realizing the depth of what I knew. She hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. "I was going to tell you. I didn't want it to go down like this." I let out a hollow laugh, bitter and sharp. "Tell me? When, Emily? After another night of pretending everything's fine? After another shift here? After another lie about running errands?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. I cut her off before she could speak. "You know what? It's not just the money, is it? It's not just the work. It's him." "Who is Chris, Emily? Or should I say, Sabrina?" The name hit her like a punch, her face crumpling, her eyes darkening with panic. "It's not what you think," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Stop," I snarled, my tone ice cold. "You've been texting him. I saw it. You're in love with him, aren't you? You've been cheating on me with him, behind my back." She shook her head, her face streaked with tears. "No, I swear, it's not like that. It's just, it's complicated." "Complicated?" I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. "No, Emily, this isn't complicated. You've been lying to me. You've been cheating on me. Emotionally, physically, I don't even know anymore. And for what? For some guy? For someone you met here?" She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I had nothing left to hold back. I had nothing left to say. Without another word, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me. But as I stormed out of the building, fury still roiling inside me, I knew I wasn't finished. Not yet. Not after everything I'd discovered. There was still more to be done. I was consumed by rage, betrayal, lies, constant deceit. My blood was still boiling as I walked through the halls, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I wasn't just going to leave this. No, I needed more than just answers. I needed action, consequences. For her, yes, but for everyone in this place. I wasn't going to let this disgusting business continue without paying for what it had done. As I walked through the hall, something caught my eye. A fire alarm button on the wall. It was as if fate had placed it there for me, offering the perfect distraction. I looked around, no one was paying attention. The receptionist was off in the back somewhere, likely handling another VIP client. Without hesitation, I pressed the button. The sound that followed was deafening. The alarm blared, its shrill noise vibrating through the walls. People began shouting, scrambling. Within seconds, I saw the receptionist darting toward the back of the building, yelling at everyone to evacuate. Perfect. They'd be too distracted to notice what I was about to do. I quickly made my way to the front desk, where a laptop sat unattended. I sat down, my fingers trembling as I began to type. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. This was about bringing everything to light, exposing this place. I couldn't let it stay hidden any longer. It didn't take long to find what I needed. The folder labeled client records opened up, revealing a detailed list, names, phone numbers, appointment times. It was all there, organized neatly like this was some legitimate business. But I could tell right away these weren't ordinary people. These were powerful, influential men. I could hardly believe my eyes. I grabbed my phone and began snapping pictures, documenting every detail. Took mere minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Just as I was about to shut the laptop, another folder caught my attention. This one was labeled staff. My heart skipped. I opened it, and inside, I found exactly what I was looking for: employee files, photos, schedules. Every woman who worked there was listed, including Emily, or rather, Sabrina. I snapped pictures of those files too. If this place was going down, I wasn't going to leave anyone out. I had everything. I slipped out of the building, blending in with the crowd evacuating due to the alarm. The chaos worked to my advantage. No one even noticed me. No one suspected a thing. But I had what I needed, and now I was going to make sure everything was exposed. Later that evening, after the adrenaline had worn off, I knew exactly who to contact. There was a journalist I knew, an old friend, someone who thrived on exposing scandals like this. He'd taken down powerful people before, and I knew he wouldn't pass this up. I sent him a brief message. "I've got something big. You'll want to see this. Call me." When he called, I didn't waste time. I laid everything out for him, every detail I had uncovered. But I left Emily out of it. That was personal, and I wanted to keep it that way. I focused on the massage parlor, the VIP clients, the secret services, the dark underbelly of it all. I gave him everything: the data, the names, the receipts. I told him to hold off for now, but when the police raided the place, I wanted it all to come to light. No secrets left to hide. He was quiet for a moment before he spoke. "This is going to make a lot of people angry," he said, his tone serious. "But I'll do it." "Good," I said, hanging up the phone with a finality that felt like a door slamming shut. The next step was simple. I dialed the police, keeping my voice low, trying my best to disguise it. I told them everything: the location, the illegal operations, the high-profile clientele, and hinted at how deep this went. But I didn't mention Emily. Couldn't. It wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger than her now. It only took 15 minutes for the police to show up. I watched from a distance as the squad cars rolled in, lights flashing, their sirens wailing into the night. Officers flooded the building, heading straight for the front door. It wasn't the usual chaos. This time it was real. The next few days were a blur. The story exploded, all thanks to my journalist friend. As soon as the raid was confirmed, he went straight to work, publishing everything. Within hours, the operation was exposed for what it really was: a front for prostitution, catering to wealthy, powerful men who thought they could buy their way out of anything. This time, they couldn't. The client list went public, and the fallout was swift. Politicians, businessmen, and a few local faces I recognized were dragged into the mess. It was impossible to ignore. Within days, the people behind it were arrested. The police uncovered everything: hidden ledgers, payments that never made it to the books, records of the secret services running beneath the surface for years. The operation collapsed, its owners locked away in jail. I should have felt relieved. This was what I wanted, right? The place that had wrecked my life was gone, and everyone who had been a part of it was paying the price. But as I sat there, scrolling through my phone, reading the headlines, I felt nothing but emptiness. Emily, or Sabrina as the world now knew her, had been a part of that world. No matter how much chaos I had unleashed, no matter how many people I had exposed, the truth remained. My life, our life, would never be the same. The fallout hit hard and fast. Once the story broke, there was no way to hide. No way for Emily to escape the truth. The client list, the police raid, the scandal, it was all out in the open. It wasn't just a local story anymore. It went viral. People I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, asking if the rumors were true, wondering if my wife had been involved. At first, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to share the details. It felt too personal, too painful. But the truth had already slipped out, and avoiding it only made it worse. Neighbors, old friends, even coworkers, they all found out. Some heard it through the news, others from whispers and gossip. Emily's name didn't appear in the headlines directly, but the rumors followed fast. People were talking. The friends we'd had for years, the ones who were closest to us, started distancing themselves from her one by one. Some were genuinely shocked, asking if it was true. But others, they didn't hesitate to condemn her, even without knowing the full story. Maybe it was disgust. Maybe it was fear of being associated with the scandal. Either way, Emily became a pariah, and I could see the weight of it wearing her down. As for me, I felt numb. The divorce came faster than I'd imagined. Maybe because there was no way to salvage any semblance of dignity after everything had come out, or maybe because we both knew there was nothing left to save. Either way, there was no arguing over the details. We both understood it was over. Emily tried at first to explain, to apologize, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't need her reasons. The betrayal was too deep for me to care about what she had to say. The divorce was quick, just a formality. And to me, that was the end. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to dwell on what had happened or what I had done in return. The revenge, the exposure, sure, it gave me some sense of satisfaction, but it didn't undo anything. It didn't erase the sting of the betrayal. Once the divorce was finalized, I made a choice. I was done. I threw myself into my work, kept myself busy, focused on rebuilding. I didn't want to be the guy defined by a failed marriage. There was too much ahead of me to stay stuck in the past. Slowly, things started to get better. It didn't happen overnight, but eventually, I felt the weight lifting. I reconnected with old friends. I started going out more. I focused on being there for my kids. They were my priority. I wanted them to know that, no matter what had happened, I was still here for them. Life began to feel lighter. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. I didn't look over my shoulder anymore. I had faced the worst of it, and somehow I had come out on the other side. People asked how I was doing, expecting bitterness or anger, but I wasn't angry. I was okay. Better than okay. I had made it through. I was moving forward. As for Emily, I don't know where she is now, and frankly, I don't care. We don't talk. I've heard bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. Apparently, she's trying to rebuild her life somewhere else. But once you've lost everything, it's hard to bounce back. Her reputation will follow her wherever she goes. The damage is done. But that's her problem now, not mine. As for me, I'm doing well. I've built a new routine, set new goals, and gained a new perspective. I don't harbor anger anymore. I've let go of the past. To anyone wondering if things can ever get better after something like this, they can. Takes time, but it happens. And to those who stood by me, who didn't walk away when things got messy, thank you. I owe you more than I can express. To everyone else, life moves on and so do I. Good luck.